Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Tom Ryan, the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Sierra Meat and Seafood. Welcome to our Chef Education Series, which we'll be hosting every other month. You can attend in person or view it online anytime that you'd like. Our goal is to give you an insider's view of the meat and seafood industry. Over the last 66 years, we've learned a tremendous amount from purchasing, cutting, and distributing all types of meat and seafood. We want to give you the best tools to help you butcher your own products. We want everything that comes from our family to your kitchen to be perfect. We hope you enjoy, and please contact us with any questions.
Hi, my name is Chad Aldridge, West Coast Sales Representative for Superior Farms. Today, we're going to properly show you how to break down a lamb carcass so that you can profitably put it on your menu. First step of breaking down a carcass is you want to observe your 4 different primals, and we're going to start with our first one, which is the shoulder, the front of the lamb. And basically what we're going to do is take our shoulder, and some of these things that we're going to be talking about, unfortunately today we don't have a bandsaw on us, so we actually pre-cut a lot of these products that will require a bandsaw. So if you are a chef that has access to a bandsaw in your restaurant, you could take advantage of ordering things in primal or whole cuts. So we're going to take the square cut shoulder and split it in half with a bandsaw, and then actually use your bandsaw, and you're going to get 2 different cuts out of the shoulder. One is your arm chops, which will basically be this piece right here with the bone in the middle. And then your second cut you're going to get is we call it a blade chop. So it's going to have the blade running on the outside right there versus the arm chop, which has the bone in the center. One of the other, we call it a byproduct of the square cut shoulder, is the dinner riblets. There's 4 ribs that get remained up in the square cut shoulder that when you debone it will be removed. These are 4 little riblets, very good for small plates, bar appetizer menus, very tender to eat. One of the pieces you're going to get from deboning your own shoulder is part of the neck, which is actually a great product for creating your own stew meat, or trim for if you're grinding your own product and making grind for sliders, burgers, lamb spaghetti, whatever that may be. We actually just brought a tray here for the lamb grind to show you what our grind is. And then coming off the front of the square cut shoulder, when you've cut this prior, you're going to get 2 foreshanks, basically the 2 forearms of the lamb. The foreshanks tend to be a little smaller in size compared to the hindshanks, but they're great for slow cooking, comfort foods. So you got fall, winter, and early spring. Slow cook these in the oven and pull them out, after cooking all day. Great items. So another cut that you as a chef, if you did want to order a square cut shoulder as whole, that you could create is basically creating a boneless shoulder. Boneless shoulder roasts are great for many applications. The shoulder in general is one of those cuts of the lamb that I would say has the best stable pricing year round. There's not really a holiday that drives the shoulder up in price. So if you're one of those chefs that wants to put a lamb cut on the menu where the price is going to stay very consistent and isn't volatile due to holiday demand, the lamb shoulder is a great product if you can use it. Right now we're deboning the shoulder completely and creating that roast. Once you have the shoulder deboned and you have that roast, there's many applications that as a chef you can utilize the roast for. Smoking is a great application. Smoking a whole shoulder, slicing it very thin, deli style, and doing like a garlic lamb aioli sandwich. You can also slow cook a whole shoulder, and basically it pulls apart just like people are well versed with pulled pork. You can do pulled lamb. You can do, and with that you can do tacos, sliders, Greek nachos, all sorts of things with the boneless roast after you've slow cooked it. All of our specs on all of our meat that we'll be cutting for you today, as Chewy's cutting through this, is all, we do 1/8 trim on everything. So we're taking a lot of that trimming off of your hands. As a consumer, you're not gonna have to trim a lot of fat off. However, if you are a chef that, like I said, is gonna order a square cut shoulder and you really wanna utilize everything in this, You're gonna get your shanks, you're gonna get your neck meat for trim and stew, you're gonna get a boneless roast, or if you wanted to create your arm and shoulder chops, you can have steaks to cook too. After it's deboned, you can roll it up. You can order it just like this from us as well, as a roast, and it'll come netted. Or if you're doing this yourself, you know, if you have your own netting string, you can tie your own strings around. Now we're gonna move into the second part of the lamb, second primal, which is your hotel, or we call it a bracelet. This is where your racks come from. This displayed right here is a whole bracelet before we cut it. If we had a bandsaw, like I said today, we would do this two different ways. We're going to remove the bottom part of the bracelet, which is removing your ribs and your breast. And then we're going to turn it vertically, and we're going to slide it through the bandsaw again, splitting the two racks into two separate hotels. Once we've got the hotel split in half and we've got the ribs and the breast removed, you're basically left with a rack chine on. With our bandsaw, we actually remove the chine and feather bones off there. We also remove the backbones. This is what you guys would refer to as a CFO rack, which stands for chine feather off, cap on. This is a rack that maybe as a chef, if you were wanting a lower cost rack where you could utilize a lot of the trim and the French that you're removing in grinds or stew meat, would be a great product for you in saving cost. What we're actually removing right now from the rack, and all your racks will come this day, is we remove the paddle bone. Paddle bones are a really tough, chewy piece of cartilage that you don't want to leave in there for consumers. After we remove the paddle bone, there's different ways of Frenching a rack of lamb, and there's different bone lengths. We're going to do what we call a 3 by 1.5 French. And what I mean by that is when we quoting the first number in the rack, which is the 3, we're saying that it's a 3-inch bone. So when we've cut the bones with the bandsaw, we left the bone on this rack 3 inches. And then the 1.5, which is the second number, is going to be the trim that we're Frenching up from the eye of the rack. Like I said before, all of our specs come with 1/8 trim, since this is a cap-on rack. So the full term for this rack would be a 3 by 1.5 French cap-on rack. Is we're going to leave a fat cap on it. It's only going to be 1/8 trim. It's going to be 3-inch bone, and then it's going to be 1.5 inch up from the eye as far as the Frenching goes. Most of these racks that come out of our California facilities are going to be weighing in that 2-pound range racks. So it's perfect for plates. If you were wanting to do a domestic rack and maybe cut it into a 4-rib rack, you're going to get probably about 16-ounce portion on each plate. You can also take it further, one step further, if you were wanting to do rib chops for your consumers or your customers. Some people call these lollipops. See that commonly on a bar? We call them rib chops. Always note that there is a difference between rib chops and loin chops. Rib chops come from the rack. So right here we have two individual rib chops. You can grill these up and serve them individually, either on an appetizer plate or entree. And then, or if you want to do a 3-rib rack per entree, you can do that as well. Taking the other side of the hotel, we're going to demonstrate a slightly different spec of a rack. We are going to again cut the chine and feather bone off like we do with all of our racks, removing the backbone. The only difference really with this rack that we're going to do is when we did cut this rack with the bandsaw, we left the bone 4 inches long as compared to a 3-inch bone. And then this rack is actually going to be cap off. So we're going to remove the whole cap as he's doing right now, so that we're actually not going to leave a 1/8 trim. The cap will be completely removed. After we remove the cap, we're going to mark where we're going to do the French as a guideline. And this is going to be a 2-inch French. So we're going to go 2 inches up from the eye and then French from there up the bone. So again, putting this rack together would be a 4 by 2 French cap off rack. As a company, we probably have over 100 different specs on racks. So as far as a chef, if you're wanting to French your own, we can start you, like you said, with the cap-on rack, or you can go all the way down to what we call a spider rack, which is one where it's been Frenched all the way to the eye and completely removing the fat cap and trim. And then again, depending on your portion size or what you're trying to do, you can do 3 or 4 rib, or again, cut them into lollipops if you are wanting to do smaller plates or individual rib chops on the plate. All depends on your plate cost, what you're aiming for portion size. And again, each rack is about 2 pounds and you're getting 8 rib chops out of each. So in reality, you're getting about 2 ounces per rib chop. The second cut that you're going to get off your hotel is going to be your ribs and breast. Once you cut those into 2, you have your ribs, which we call Denver ribs. This is usually anywhere from 8 to 9 ribs. Again, we remove all the fat, leaving 1/8 trim. Denver ribs are definitely becoming more popular and high in demand, especially in summertime. Great grilling items, and as well as smoking. And depending on your portion size, again, you can even take these further down and cut them into smaller portions. Create your own riblets like we took out of the boneless shoulder, or individual ribs. If you wanted to do maybe some Asian style ribs on a menu, something like that, smaller portion sizes. And the second part of the bottom of the bracelet is going to be your breast. Breast meat can be used for trim, for grind, for burgers. You can use a little bit of it in your stew. We also sell a boneless breast, which most commonly is known as lamb belly, just like pork belly. And then we actually also sell a pre-cooked cured lamb bacon. Lamb breast meat's very tender, very good for like stir fries, anything like that. If you're doing like a lamb stir fry, Asian style pasta, something. And part 3 of our cutting demo is going to be moving into our third primal, which is our drop loin, our loin area. This, what we have here, is a full drop loin. So you can actually see it from both angles there. And what we would do if we had a bandsaw here is basically take our drop loin and we're going to cut the excess, we call it the flanks, off on both sides. And then when you cut it down the middle, you're creating a split loin. And then from that point, once you have a split loin, you can actually determine multiple things from it, which we're going to show you. So this is the split loin. This is one side. Right now, this is starting out as a split loin, untrimmed. We're going to take it and turn it into a split loin trimmed 1 inch. So if you're a chef, like again, that has your own bandsaw and wants to take advantage of that price point and can use this excess trim in other dishes, definitely cost worthy. We're going to remove that fat cap on the outside, leaving 1/8 trim like on all of our cuts. And when I say we're leaving a 1 inch tail, the tail is the meat left on the point of that loin chop. So when you're talking in loin terminology, there could be a 0 inch tail, a 1 inch tail, 2, and then 4. So it depends on the length of that tail. What we're creating right now for you is a split loin. So it's a whole loin that's been split in half and it's got a 1 inch tail on it. Sometimes what I find for leaving the tail on there for grilling purposes is it's just like, this is your New York steak and beef, and that fat tail is actually leaving that flavor on there. You don't see many people cooking a New York steak without leaving that fat on the outside. So my preference usually is actually to leave the 1 inch tail on there. If you have a bandsaw and you're a chef, you can cut your own chops. However, we do sell the chops also pre-portioned and pre-cut for you. So these have already been kind of pre-cut with the bandsaw. We cut the chops into 4 ounce, 5 ounce, or 6 ounce chops. The chops that we're displaying right now are 0 inch chops, so we've left 0 tail on there. All these chops usually range anywhere from 4 to 5 to 6 ounces. These particular chops that we're showing, 0-inch tail. And then the byproduct, if you do buy a whole drop loin, of course, that we removed with the bandsaw is your flanks. Mostly what you're gonna get out of your flanks is trim meat for grinding for your hamburgers, sliders. Could get a little meat if you were doing a stew. There is some pretty tender flank meat in here if you wanted to actually include it into like a stir fry as well. Okay, moving into our last and fourth primal is our legs, which is the back part of the lamb. Right now what we're showcasing for you right now is what we would call a hangback leg. These are when both legs are actually still together. Like I said, not having a bandsaw today, we already pre-cut them for you. What you would want to do after you have the hangback legs is take them and run them through a bandsaw, creating 2 individual whole legs. After you have the 2 individual whole legs, you can actually break them down into multiple different parts. What we've done on our bandsaw already is created our sirloin steaks. You also get bone-in leg steaks. And then from the base of the leg, you're getting your hind shank. You can also take your hind shank and process it further if you have a bandsaw and cutting it into whether you want osso buco. So we have 2-inch, 1.5-inch cut osso bucos. Or if you prefer a volcano shank and removing the top part of the shank, you can actually create a volcano shank, which may be more plate presentation friendly for you. Most volcano shanks range in that 18 to 22 ounce range. One of the byproducts after you've done your sirloin steaks, leg steaks, and the shanks is you will have a little bit of trim left where you can actually utilize that for your stew meat, or like I said, if you're making a grind for your burgers or sliders. Next, what we're gonna do is show you how to debone a leg. What we're doing right now is actually removing the tailbone, which is the tail of the lamb that runs up into the leg. We're removing all the fat and trim.
Leg flank.
The leg flank meat, which will come out. This is also a very tender cut of meat. It's really good for stir fries if you're having a stir fry dish or just want to grill up some meat for a sandwich. Flank meat in general tends to be really tender when you grill it up just right. When you're ordering legs, there's different style legs you can order, from shortcut bone-in to semi-boneless to a complete boneless. We're going to actually process this leg all the way down into a boneless. What we're doing right now is removing what's called the H-bone from the leg. All of our meat cutting done in our facility is done by hand to ensuring we're getting the best yields for our end users. Nothing is done by a machine for cutting. Definitely takes a skill and a science to deboning a leg. After you remove the H-bone, we're actually going to remove the top part of the leg, which is actually where your sirloin is, leaving you 2 different cuts. So you have your sirloin portion and what we would call maybe in a retail cut, this would be your shortcut leg, semi-boneless. There's tenders, and we also have a sirloin. The center cut of the sirloin is actually the most tender part of the leg. We sell a cut we call denuded hip sirloin steak, which is actually really good for grilling, filleting out, putting like a whiskey bourbon sauce on it maybe, or using it for sandwiches or stir fries. These are sirloin steaks, boneless. We're actually removing a little bit of the fat to make sure we have that 1/8 trim on there for you. A little something different to offer on your menu besides your basic rack sirloin chops is always a lamb leg steak. Now we're actually going to take the rest of our leg.
Remove the hind shank.
We're going to remove that hind shank. So there's your hind shank, and like I said, you can break that down even further into a volcano or your osso buco cuts, or we can do that for you as well. Now that you've had your hind shank removed, we're going to create the final product, which is the boneless leg. But our boneless legs come netted and tied. Boneless legs, of course, a very traditional seasonal item, highly driven around Christmas time or Easter, but also great year-round for other implications. If you're a chef that's wanting to take full price advantage of legs and you can utilize a leg somehow on your menu, the best time to take advantage of legs pricing is in the summer. Summertime, legs are not in high demand and you can really utilize that leg for different entrees, slow cooking it for pulled leg of lamb, something like that. We have an inside round roast right here we just created. Great for grilling and slicing up really thin. Can create steaks, fillets, fajitas. So what we have right now is a half a leg roast, if you're wanting smaller portions to serve versus a full leg. And that concludes how to break down a full American lamb carcass. We hope that you've taken away today some great points on how to maybe possibly order cuts of the lamb that you typically wouldn't from a primal, and maybe cutting some items out of it yourself and utilizing that cut to its full advantage to actually benefit your plate cost and be more profitable in your restaurant.